I will definitely take back the understanding of a democratic process and a democratic structure. By no means is America perfect. I would love to say that 8 million times to everyone here, because although we are an example, we're not perfect. But I can definitely appreciate the ability to feel like we have the power enough to participate and engage, and although everyone doesn't all the time, the fact that we can, and that we can lean on other supports outside of the government. I think the two structures are very different. The French government and the American government, very, very different. So not to say that one is better than the other, but we kind of have to lean on something else, right? That will charge the work that we do and support it outside of the government structure that exists. And that actually complements the government structure to an extent. So I'll take back that appreciation and really understanding of the democratic process.
Just the role of government and how, I don't know, maybe we could encourage our government to play a larger role in the work that nonprofits do in the United States, whereas I feel like they play more of a backseat role, and they provide funding and support through our elected officials. But if that could maybe be a stronger role, it would provide more security for nonprofits to do the work that they do.
I learned that, people all over, obviously in France, in Paris and New York City, there are a lot of similarities in some areas. But I think if I had to take back one thing or a few things that I learned here, it's how the system, the system can crush people's spirits, and if they're not working with everyday people. And I think we get that sometime in New York City. Obviously you guys are getting it here in France. So I think the biggest message I can not only bring back, but to make sure that I practice myself and continue to practice, is to ensure that we're listening to the community and allowing them to make decisions. And I think that's the biggest lesson sort of you can walk away with from here. And there's no perfection anywhere. There's no such thing as a perfect system, but we should all strive to make it better.
I feel like there's still so much to learn. It's incredibly interesting to me here that the government is what funds a lot of the associations, right? There's not a foundation sector that provides independent funding, so I think that just gives a very different context for how things work here. For my organization, we get very little government money, and so we kind of wouldn't be able to exist in France in the way that we exist in the United States. I think it's interesting sort of how people here, think about the republic, think about the whole, think about the citizen. I think we don't have that sense in the U.S. in the same way. I think there's some good parts to it. I think there are also parts that sort of exclude certain people. So I feel like I'm still sort of absorbing everything that I'm learning to take back.
Well, definitely my eyes have been open to the politics here in France. I wasn't at all aware of how there's not really a nonprofit sector here, and how the difference between France and US is that we definitely professionalize, having community organizers, social workers. That is something that is almost set as a priority. And not that it's not a priority here, but I think that the structure is very different, and I'm interested to learn more. So I'm definitely going to be going back to do some research, and to definitely relay what I have discovered here, and it's definitely something I'll be doing.
Yeah, there's many things. I think there's a lot of, I think it's a ripe time right now. I think there's a lot of energy, and there's a need and there's a will to make change and be, have people participate in a process. So I'm learning a lot about the governmental structure, But you know, in a lot of ways, I know that a lot of this conversation has been about what's happening in the U.S. versus what's happening in Paris and France. But really, you know, when you look at political structures and systems, you know, a lot of what the U.S. political system is an offshoot from what was happening in Europe, you know, when we first started. So there's a lot of similarities. We may call some of the political positions something different, but so just in terms of, you know, learning history, you learn about what's happening here in Europe. So I think there's a lot to take back in terms of the energy and the questions that you all are asking for us to kind of really, it keeps us sharp around what is our process really like? Can we really, is it transferable? So, and that's the biggest thing is like what we're doing in New York City, because that's what we're really talking about in New York City, not necessarily what's happening throughout the U.S. Is that transferable? Can you lay that on top of the conditions and the environment here in Paris? I think that's unfair. That's an unfair comparison because, you know, it's different people. There might be some fundamental issues that are the same in terms of poverty and discrimination and racism and all those different type of things. But I think it's really have to understand the people here, what the needs are here, the structures that are in place that are obstacles towards people's empowerment.
And I think a big question for me, and probably for many of you today, is what next? So for all of us, I think our work has to continue in New York City. I think a lot of the ideas shared here today, we have to go back and convince people about.
Donc moi aussi je voudrais vous remercier, mais pour moi la grande question qui reste c'est oui et maintenant, qu'est-ce qui va se passer maintenant? Et je pense que l'étape suivante ce serait d'aller à New York et de convaincre les gens de continuer ce travail.
And one quick thing that I think I'm taking away from this whole experience, I know we ended the conference thinking about empowerment in really big ways, so finance, you know, whole departments in the state, but I think for a lot of us, our work on the day-to-day is a lot smaller, and it's really, you know, there's elements of person-to-person and individual empowerment that all added up are what can transform communities. So for those of us working with youth, it's often, you know, a young person walking through the door, what are they feeling? What opportunities do they have to share and use their voice and find their own power? And that is empowerment. And I think that goes for a lot of us.
Et je sais que cette conférence se termine en parlant d'idées très très générales, en parlant de financement, c'est quelque chose à un niveau très élevé, mais pour la plupart d'entre nous, quand on parle d'empowerment, on pense à un niveau beaucoup plus bas, beaucoup plus terre à terre, c'est l'empowerment des petits gens, l'empowerment en face à face, l'empowerment individuel. Pour nous, c'est vraiment généralement un jeune qui vient les voir et comment on peut donner l'opportunité à ce jeune de trouver sa voie, dans le sens de son chemin et de sa voix dans le sens de sa manière de s'exprimer et de pouvoir faire une différence ensemble.